What's up, guys? I'm Mike Lowe, and we're back in EA Sports College Football 25. We're talking recruiting, and I can tell you right now, this video is going to be different than other recruiting videos out there. We're going to be recruiting with a larger program like Texas, and we're going to be recruiting in this same video using a smaller school like James Madison University. There are a lot of differences. I'm going to talk about kind of the pros and cons. We're going to talk about maybe some cutthroat recruiting tactics. We're going to talk about some realistic recruiting tactics. So really whatever your flavor is in recruiting, big program, small, cutthroat, realistic, we're going to cover it all. Let's get into it. Hey, but before we do that, I owe everyone a huge thank you for helping grow this channel. And I just am so appreciative, and it's been so much fun, and I'm just so glad that you're here. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please do. Give the video or the other videos on the channel a like, leave a comment, because it really just kind of helps me kind of see what's out there and what people are looking to do and what they want to hear more about. So I'm super excited to get into this video, but to also hear from you from other videos as we continue to build out this channel and community together. So thank you, everyone. Let's get back to the video. There's nothing quite like the feeling of a blank recruiting board. But we're not even going to start here. We're not even going to start at the prospect list. We're going to start by pressing R3 and looking at our team needs. Now, we're not only going to be looking here, but recruiting is kind of like negotiating something to do with two of your best friends, where they are similar, but they don't always like to do exactly the same things. So what I recommend doing is just taking a screenshot of your offense, taking a screenshot of your defense, and then special teams you probably don't need to screenshot, but just in case, you can do that as well. And then that's just going to help you. It's a quicker way to reference, because when you get into this prospect list, as you probably have seen, when you start hitting R3 and you back out, anything that you've done here, say like I've gone to 5 stars and I've gone to quarterbacks, it's going to like resettle that, and it just gets kind of frustrating. Instead, you can be on the screen, you can open up your pictures, you can even open it up on your phone if you wanted to, and then you can reference all of this kind of at the same time. Now, I mentioned recruiting sort of has like two arms, or I think I called it two friends. And we're getting these guys to cooperate here. And of course, team needs is part of it, but the other one are the prospects that are interested in you. And so we're really trying to find a happy medium. For instance, I have two openings at quarterback, meaning I have a need at quarterback. There's actually two needs. And luckily, there's going to be some options here if we're just kind of keeping it simple and looking at kind of like 4 and 5 star interest. Cool. We should be good to go there. But check out my team needs at, say, a position like defensive tackle here. We have 10 on the roster. Even with 3 seniors leaving, we're still left with 7 defensive tackles. It's not really a huge need. So what do you do when you go back into here and we sort to defensive tackle, and we go and maybe look at the ratings here? We just kind of sort by, again, 5 star being first. You're like, oh, wait a second, I have these guys who are interested. Like this guy, kind of seems like a no-brainer. 5 star, we'll scout him, go after him. But what about this guy? Like, he looks like a pretty good player. Maybe I should go. I'm not saying you can't or you shouldn't, but you just need to kind of know what you're looking at. You have 35 target slots. You have a finite number of hours to spend, and you have a finite number of scholarships to offer. So I'm not saying you don't need to recruit Hepburn here, but it might be wise to maybe just put him on the back burner, so to speak, pun intended. And of course, the reason we're going to do that is because we have a lot of need spots here that we need to fill. So it's not that it's impossible. Maybe we'll have space to add even a second defensive tackle into this recruiting class, but let that kind of come to you. You need to work together with these two arms of recruiting, players who are interested, who are of course good players, hopefully, and your team needs screen. And while we're talking about the team needs screen still, one thing to keep in mind is it doesn't really track players that you've redshirted. So if you look on the right-hand side, I have 3 quarterbacks, but I've actually redshirted Owens. And so even though he's showing as a freshman like Manning, they're both going to eventually be redshirt freshmen, but next year it'll be Owens will be in this slot, redshirted freshman, whereas Manning will be here. Of course, the other thing you have to keep in mind, especially if you're talking about Arch Manning or a player like that, are potential transfers. So there's a little bit more that goes to it than just what you're seeing. Some of this is just legacy stuff from the previous NCAA game. The screen looks exactly the same, especially they move special teams to its own spot. It's otherwise the same exact screen, but I think there are some other things to keep in mind, not just with redshirting, but of course with new features of the game, like the transfer portal. But starting with quarterback, as I mentioned, we have a need for 2 quarterbacks. Apparently, it looks like they want us to be fielding 5 quarterbacks on the roster. And then where I start the recruiting process is I will start with 5-star prospects at a big program, and I will go to quarterbacks. I know I need 2, and luckily we do have a few options here that we'll look at. And then I'll just kind of comb through those 2 pages and look and say, okay, yeah, we got plenty here. So I don't even really need to worry about getting into the 3-star, because even if we find, like, say, a 3-star gem, it's going to be a 4-star player at best, and I would rather be scouting these 4-stars to see if any of them pop into a 5. But really, we're going to start here, because here's another little trick. You might not even need to scout 5 stars, because if worst case scenario they turn out to just be a 4-star after you fully recruit them, for instance, and they are a bust, it's kind of like just being 1 star below. So, like, is it that big a deal if Jameson comes in as a 4-star? We don't know his dev trait yet. This guy could still develop into an awesome player. So if you're looking for a way to maybe cut corners on your scouting, don't scout 5-stars. Just know that they're going to be a good player, and if they turn out to be a 5-star, awesome. There are no 5-star gems as far as I know. I could totally be wrong on that, but I don't recall there being 5-star gems. So again, it's just a way you can cut corners and save some of those hours. And speaking of hours, we're going to get to that way later, because that's the last thing I do. I will not do any spending of hours until I have my target board built out, my recruiting board is in order how I want it, and then sometimes I'll even just go through mathematically. I'll use Excel or something on my computer and really just kind of make sure I know where I want to use these points, because once you start spending the points, they're gone. A few other things to keep in mind here is look for deal breakers, especially deal breakers, of course, that are complete deal breakers and take you out of the running. But on the flip side too, look for really, really strong deal breakers. We'll come back to that in just a second. Also, look at the pipeline influence. Of course, a higher number the better, and I believe 5 is the highest you can get. So, for instance, if we look at Jeff Jameson here, this guy is going to be a Longhorn unless I really, really screw this up. He not only has us as his #1 school, first off, he's from Texas. He's got the 5 pipeline influence here, and he is also a deal breaker that's fantastic for us. We have an A+ in his pro potential deal breaker. So, I mean, this guy is just a total lock. Now, if we look at this other guy, the other 5-star, I don't know if I'm going to put this guy on my recruiting board, because he's going to end up costing a lot more in the long run than Jameson, especially if I don't waste any scouting on Jameson, because I'm like, whatever, he's good, bring him in. This guy could cost a little bit more, because first off, this is in an online league, so I have at least, well, there's going to be even more than that because we just started. So I know Texas A&M is another user. I'm going to have a ton of competition here by users. If this guy's good, someone else is going to fully scout him, and they're going to go all in. They're going to offer him. I'm probably not going to get this guy. So, like, just let it go. It's not a huge deal, especially when I go and look at the 4-stars and I have all these guys who have first interest. So these are other players. And again, here's some more with 5-star pipelines, even 4. And I could probably find one. There we go. So here's another one that has championship contender A+. So, like, I'm better just to go in and get one of these guys. Again, I don't have to use any scouting if I don't want to. I'll just grab them. I guess I'd probably scout the 4-star because they could also fall down and be a 3-star. So I'll take that back. But so, okay, I go and I scout some of these guys and maybe find the one I really, really like. And I'll kind of get into that, how we can kind of compare some of these others. But I can tell you right now, I'm going to probably go after the 5-star for sure that we just looked at here in Jameson. And I'm just going to grab one of these 4-stars, because if they come in the same year, I mean, you can only play one quarterback. And of course, this will change for other positions. But just generally, these are some of the things that I'm looking at as we really just kind of go through and take our time with recruiting. And by the way, all of these 4-star prospects that have Texas as their first choice have an A+ deal breaker in our favor. So this is huge. Even looking at the guy that only has 2 pipelines, we're in really, really good shape. So we'll be able to look a little bit closer maybe at the player's tendency, or whether they have a funny name like Timmy Finger. So I've decided to add 2 of these 4-star players to my board. The first is Damian Vaughns. He's a scrambler out of Woodville, Texas. I liked him because, again, he fits all of the different things we just talked about. But he's also a scrambler. We do use, even though Texas is a pro-style offense, we do run some option. And so I want to make sure that the quarterback's got some mobility. So I've been actually ignoring, just because I have the luxury to ignore it, kind of the field generals, or even quarterbacks that are like 6'4" or taller. I found they're just not going to be as athletic at that height. So for me, Damian Vaughns fits it really, really well, for all the reasons we've already talked about. The other one I'm going with is actually a player who only has 2 for the pipeline because he's out of Utah. But out of American Fork, Utah, Matt Shakir. And again, he is an improviser, 6'1". I would think he's going to be pretty athletic, but really the biggest reason I picked him is he's the 6th ranked quarterback in this entire class. He's a top 40 player in the entire class, and he wants to come to Texas. So like, I'm just not going to ignore that. You can make a similar argument for Tommy Finger, who is the top 100 ranked player. He's the 9th best quarterback, but he's 6'4". Again, I have the luxury of just maybe we can come back to him later if some of these guys end up busting or something like that. But the two quarterbacks that we're going to be looking at so far on our recruiting board, 3 5-star Jameson, Vaughns, and Shakir. Now, I can't be too aggressive in adding extra players beyond my needs. I counted these up, and I have a total of 26 needs on this team. We have 35 scholarships. So you have a little bit of wiggle room, and quarterback's an important position, and we have a lot of options, so I will be scouting some quarterbacks, so that's why I threw a third one on there as an option, but I'm not going to have the luxury of doing that at every single position, so you're going to have to pick and choose. I won't be talking about every single position here, especially with Texas, but let's talk about running back. I have one team need there, and the reason I want to talk about this position is that I personally like to use different tendencies at running back. I have a lot of elusive backs at Texas. We're in pretty good shape there. I only have one receiving back, and I have no power backs. I like to use all three in my depth chart, especially with a realistic injury setting, especially with the wear and tear that's in this game. I like to rotate guys out. I literally use 3 running backs, even if one's a stud. Yeah, maybe I'll put him in a couple different spots in the depth chart, but I like to kind of keep that rotation fresh. So Greg Braun is an easy selection for that one spot. He's a 5-star. He's from Texas. He has us first. He's in our pipeline at a 5. This is for all the reasons I already said. This makes total sense. But I want to add one more because I'm looking for a power back. And again, I'm going over kind of that allotment I just talked about. But you can see as we sort through first, I can kind of ignore, not that these guys wouldn't be good. We could always come back to this later, but I'm going to ignore the receiving backs. I'm going to ignore even the elusive back. And I'm looking at 2 power backs here that have us first. They're both from Texas. And they are both, pretty much the same size, and they're going to just fit that kind of role I'm looking for. But the reason I'm going to go with Tyler Kroger instead of Sam Knight is because look how much further along the recruiting window he is. I mean, I could probably get this guy to commit pretty quickly. That's going to mean less points than someone like Sam Kite, and maybe there's going to be more potential for, say, like LSU or Ohio State or somebody to come jump me with this. And so this just makes a lot of sense for me to go after Kroger here instead. So he's the other one we're going to add, but we've already used 2 of those extra spots now because I only had 1 need at running back. So again, we got to keep that buttoned up. Oh my gosh, look at all these 5-star wide receiver recruits. This is amazing. Oh, wait a second though. Let me look at my team needs at receiver. Oh, I don't need any because we already have 10 on the team. We're going to still have 9 next year. So what am I not going to do in this situation? Well, what I'm not going to do is go and look at this the same way I'm looking at quarterback and running back. I'm not going to say, oh, well, they don't have interest, but I don't know, maybe I've got to talk myself into this. Maybe I could start to get ahead of Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State and Alabama and Clemson. Maybe they just won't recruit these players. You're wrong. Leave these players alone. You don't need a receiver. First off, I'll have 9 coming back next year. You're going to have other recruiting classes. There's also 4-star prospects that are probably interested in you, that some of these could be 5-star talents. Spend your time here. Quit chasing after things that aren't interested in you, even if you're a big program, and especially if we're a small program. Oh wow, so we're jumping way ahead now. I have my entire board filled, but I have to free up a few spots, and I'm going to get into kind of who we're recruiting and why we're recruiting them and so on a little bit more again, but I'm just kind of jumping ahead to show you the board right now. So what I've done is I've ranked my players simply by their national ranking average. So Gage Braun, that receiver, he is the 8th rated player. You can see kind of next to his name, right next to the star rating. He is the 8th best prospect in the country. That's across all positions. And I've just gone through and I've just labeled, or I shouldn't say labeled, I've organized them all by numerical order. And because there's still 3 safeties that I want to add to my board, I am just going to go through here and I have to kind of free up 3 spots. And so, your first thought would be like, well, let's get rid of the fullback. And that's possible because I get it. You can just use like a fourth string tight end at fullback. We don't use fullbacks a lot. But one thing I'm noticing in this game is like it is hard to convert 4th and 1s just by running up the middle or even QB sneaking. Like you can stop it. And even if you try to call a pass and go over the top, it's tough. You got guys right in your face. There's tight coverage. So to me, like, I don't know. I don't really want to just give up on the idea of having a legitimate blocking fullback. And of course, you can get cute and like put a defensive tackle there and that kind of thing, and that's fun. But like when you look at the ratings, I don't know. I am not ready to just to cut ties here with a fullback who's interested in playing for us. But as I scroll up here and I look, the positions that I can cut from are going to be receiver, because again, we have 10. And it's going to be kind of this mix of like ends or outside linebackers, which, by the way, another tip is you need to be looking at what kind of linebackers you're getting, because some of these linebackers might actually be defensive ends and vice versa. Some of these defensive ends might be linebackers based on their defense. I also love how on this screen here, you can actually see on the right-hand side not only your current players, but the players that you're currently recruiting. Now, there's some little glitches there with some of the player weights, it looks like, for whatever reason. But this is really, really cool because, like, for instance, I can go through and look and say, okay, these guys are the size of like a legitimate linebacker, Russo, maybe even like a hybrid safety. I can look at the outside linebackers and say, okay, we got more linebackers, but look at that 6'5", 245 outside linebacker. He's probably more of an end. So the long and short of it is you can use this screen. They weren't kidding when EA said this is a really, really valuable screen. I didn't find it as valuable in NCAA 14 when it was just the part on the left, this table here. But I love seeing the information here that's included on the right. And you can just flip through even if it's multiple pages. So again, really, really cool. You can look to see the player sizes and things like that. So what I'm trying to say here is the places I can cut from are going to be receiver, because we're just totally overloaded. And it's going to be kind of like either outside linebacker or a defensive end or something like that. We could cut from that. You could also make the argument like, well, maybe we don't need these defensive tackles, but here's the difference. We saw a bunch of 4-star receivers interested. Those are nice. Some of them could pop. But with the defensive tackle, we have a 5-star, and I believe it's the top defensive tackle in the country. It's also a speed rusher, which I'm a bit obsessed with. And there's no way I'm just not going to try to recruit this guy. I don't care if I have 50 defensive tackles. We're going to go after him. So, point being, when we go back here and look, I'm just kind of working up from the bottom, and I got to find 3 players to cut. And the 3 players we're going to cut are going to be wide receiver James Jackson, who's ranked 440th in the nation, Emmanuel Najvar, who's ranked 433rd, and then linebacker Dalton Hurt, 416 ranking. And the reason is, hey, these are nice players. Don't get me wrong, they're 4-star guys, but when we're looking at a program like Texas, you just can't take everything. Even if they're interested, even if they look like good players, you just don't have spaces for them. And there's nothing wrong with it, but like in Emmanuel Najjar, you can see Houston in our league, that's probably a good fit for them. That's probably where he should go. Even as a 4-star, he's going to get more playing time, and you can see even some other programs like BYU, maybe Texas Tech, Texas Christian. That makes more sense. This is not a top-tier talent. Jackson, he's got a kind of high aspirations here, you could say, looking at some really, really big programs, but are any of the programs looking at him yet? No. So that one makes sense. And then Hurt, to me, it's kind of the same thing, but he's kind of a tweener. Even if he was like more of like a hybrid tendency, because I use a 4-2-5, I do like to have that kind of hybrid safety who plays close to the line, kind of like a Brian Branch at Alabama or the Detroit Lions. And so, 6'1", 218, he's okay. If he was a hybrid, maybe, but this is kind of just like a bigger safety. I'm not really sure he's a fit. So we're going to get rid of these 3 guys, and it also makes sense because, of course, receiver, we have tons we already talked about. But I can also look here at my defensive ends and say, okay, well, I know I need to get at least 3, and so maybe we could even go 4. And I'm looking at these players' size. Now Byler's huge. I mean, he could be a massive end. We could probably even move him in the tackle, but being so tall, probably keep him at end. Good size there, good size there. So there's 4. Now this guy we're actually recruiting as a linebacker. So we already have 4, which is like 3 plus a backup. And so that's really nice. Outside linebacker, there were a few guys in here I'd consider ends. Here's one, 6'5", 245, 6'3", 259, and the rest are outside linebackers. And so it makes sense. We're actually cutting from the outside linebacker pool, not just in positional name, but also just in kind of how I was looking to outfit the roster. And so we're back here. We're going to remove James Jackson. We're going to remove Najvar. And we're going to remove, not him. We're going to remove Daniel Hurt. And so there we go. You can see our order stays the same. It doesn't mean we can't recruit those players again later. Other opportunities are going to open up, but for now, they're not making our initial board. And now I'm able to add in those last 3 safeties for a total of 4 safeties, by the way, that I have here. And what I'm going to do now is just slot them by their national ranking. Now I will be showing off a few more of these prospects in just a little bit, but this is my board, and we have players ranking nationally from 8th all the way down to, I guess, 738, but if we really kind of go up all the way up to 464, and that's just because that is a position of need. I can be a little bit more flexible, or maybe desperate if you want to call it that, at a position of need like tackle. And it's worth looking at your board from this screen too. So I'm targeting 3 quarterbacks, we need 2. I'm targeting 2 running backs, we need 1. And you can just see I'm comparing this column to the needs column, targeted versus needs. And just want to make sure that I have kind of a bigger or equal number in targeted. And then if I have something like this, we're like, well, wait, these are zeros. This is just because, like, yeah, those players, when I ranked nationally and I was cutting players off my board, I could have easily cut the receivers based on the positional depth we have. But I wanted to cut from the bottom up because, well, I think we're going to be okay either way. And if I get 2 receivers that are ranked higher nationally than some other players, great. That's a great problem to have. And I like to at least have, of course, the number of targets needed. Maybe +1 is kind of a nice way of looking at it if it's just kind of a single position or something like that. So like 3 to 2 for tight ends. I look at my tackles together. So we have a need for a total of 2 tackles, and we are recruiting 3. That's fine. Those guys are easy to flip-flop. Guards, I kind of look at the interior linemen kind of as a package. So we need 2. I'm recruiting 3. I've talked about how the ends and outside linebackers in this game, you have to pay attention to their build. You have to pay attention to the defense you're trying to run. This game does not use kind of the modern nomenclature for edge rusher or jack linebacker, that kind of thing. Kind of still uses the old school stuff, so you just got to keep an eye on that. Defensive tackle I talked about, really don't have a need, but I'm not going to ignore that 5-star. Middle linebacker, I kind of look at a little bit differently than maybe my outside linebackers, but truthfully, I only put 2 linebackers on the field. I want them to do a lot of good things. I want them to stop the run. I want them to cover the pass. And so I am a little bit particular about that. I'm not just looking for like a one-trick pony there. Cornerback, of course, just kind of looking to see what we can get. There were some decent 4-stars. This is one I'll probably come back to, but there wasn't anybody that I'm like, yeah, I got to get this guy on the board right now. We're pretty deep with it. Texas has a pretty good reputation of recruiting strong corners, and I'm okay just kind of letting that go for now. And then safeties, you could argue it'd be nice to maybe get another safety in the mix here, but I'm pretty confident in the guys we're recruiting. They have us pretty high on the list, and I think they're going to be really good fits for the defense. Special teams, I'm not doing anything. I did check. I love our senior kicker and punter. We got 2. They're okay. I'll go through a few of my favorite recruits from this class that I'm working on, and then I will get into kind of what we're going to do here with our points. But this is Stefan Tolbert. He is probably my favorite recruit of this class for me, and he's a speed rusher out of Pasadena, Texas. So he's a Texas pipeline guy, 5 rated pipeline, 6'2", 307 already as a high school player. I love speed rushing defensive tackles. As somebody who grew up watching Ndamukong Suh with the Lions, as somebody who understands the importance of having someone like an Aaron Donald, who I understand there's not more than one Aaron Donald out there, but if you can get someone that can even come close to that, disrupting the pocket from the inside, it's so valuable. So I am in love with this guy. I'm pumped that he has Texas as his number 1 team, and we're just really excited to see what he's going to be able to bring to the table. Johnny Byler is a guy that I almost didn't put on my board because he's an end that's 6'6", which is great, but 295 is pretty darn big. I mean, he's bigger than like J.J. Watt and Hutchinson and guys like that. But he comes in as an athlete, and so to me, it's like, okay, well, maybe this guy comes in on the inside on passing downs. Maybe he is a goal line defensive end, and I'm not looking to recruit a 5-star guy just to play on the goal line, but the point is, there's roles for a guy like this. And so to me, he wants to play at Texas. He's an interesting guy. We're going to probably throw him a scholarship. I mentioned earlier that I'm pretty big on tendencies, but don't get too locked up in positional tendency because like this is a guy that I'd probably move over to left tackle, assuming we have a right-handed quarterback. And so that's okay. That's why I look at tackles together, I look at guards together, that kind of thing. Looking at John Russo as an example, he's a 6'2", 215 linebacker. Now he could be kind of a larger safety, be a really, really nice strong safety. If you think of like an Isaiah Simmons in the NFL, that kind of player. The pass coverage thing here, I mean, I would like him to gain a little bit of weight. And as far as I know in this game, players will gain weight each season. I don't think they ever like lose weight. That'd be really cool, by the way, a cool feature that you see in some games like front office football where you might actually ask a player to lose weight. Like say if you wanted to have this guy play corner or safety, maybe in a more traditional sense. And so hoping to see that. I don't know if height changes at all, but John Roos was a guy I wanted to show you. Ibrahim is a player that I think would be a great fit for Texas, very very similar to the defensive tackle we looked at. I mentioned I like that hybrid safety, playing close to the box. We don't have a need for it obviously right now in the current season, but we're always looking to add to that. And so he's a guy I would like to see again gain a little bit of weight there. He would probably be more of a strong safety in this defense that we play on the line. Really excited to have him on the board. You can say the exact same thing about James Felix, and hey, it doesn't hurt to have two of these guys that you can kind of see compete for that position. Everyone loves the 6'5" receiver and that kind of thing, but guys, don't sell yourself short on receivers that are 5'9" or whatever. There's a lot of talent, especially when you're talking college football. A lot of trickeration. There's a lot of trickeration in this game. There's a lot you can do if you know what you're doing with your receivers. Not to mention, you could even possibly move this guy to another position. There's a lot you can do with the JP Kenyon. There were a handful of interior linemen that I was looking at, but I am a little more particular about weight when it comes to linemen, even though they're going to gain weight. I really don't like recruiting offensive linemen that are under 300 pounds, even at the high school level, unless they're going to play center. And even then, I'm still looking probably like in the 290 range. Now, that's a luxury. I play at Texas, always have a big offensive line here. We run the ball a lot, even if this team's more kind of built for passing in this current form. But Nick Easy was a guy that kind of got on the board because he was the ideal size. There was a lot of players that were really close that also had us as a first pick, but this guy's ready to go. He's already an ideal size, and if he gets a little bit bigger, that's great. Sergio Devlin is actually an end. He's a speed rusher, but he's only 6'2", 234, so he's a little undersized. He could come in and play like third down rushing, but he's another guy I'm kind of slotting for that sort of hybrid safety role, the safety that plays close to the line I've mentioned a few times. He's another guy that could come into the mix. The other two guys are power rushers or hybrids. This guy's more of a speed rusher. So again, just kind of situational. You can use formation subs, and I think he'd have a role here for sure. So in this kind of like pre-week 0 recruiting, when you first start off your dynasty, there's not a whole lot you can really do. You add guys to your board, you can offer a scholarship, and you can scout. Now, because I've used an existing coach, my coach is pretty high ranked, my coordinators are pretty good, and I've done the math. I'm going to be able to basically recruit, or I should say scout fully, almost every single person on my board and offer them a scholarship if I want. So I've calculated that ahead of time. I don't need to be super conservative, but I also don't need to just rip through stuff. The idea here, what I'm trying to do when I start scouting guys, is I want to start subtracting players from my board. I want to free up more space so I can do things like add a cornerback or maybe add a fifth safety so that I can have a backup plan if one of those 4 guys we're going after and by the way need aren't going to be available. And so that's what I'm doing. You can rip through this quickly, but I really suggest going slow, doing a little bit of math to pull out your phone and calculator, calculate it out to see what it's going to cost you so you have an idea. And then really just think about kind of the order. Do you want to just go in like the order of how they're ranked? Do you want to go by like positional importance? Do you want to go by just, again, like some of the favorite players that you have? It's really up to you at that point, but you just have to understand you can't get those scouting points back. You can't retract the scholarship even, as far as I know. I'm not actually sure on that part. And you're going to have a lot more to do after this week when you start adding actions and scheduling visits and all that stuff, but that'll come later on. For now, again, you're just kind of deciding who you want to go and take a look at. You can also get some clues of potential players, just again looking at scholarship offers from other teams in your league, especially if you're in a user league with like 32 other users. That's going to be really helpful. I also talked about how I don't know if I'm going to scout a lot of these 5 stars because to me they're going to be really good players. I will, however, scout a few for sure. Tolbert, because if he comes back as like a bust, I don't know, I might not recruit him. I don't really need it, and I could free up a spot on my board. Another couple are going to be like these 5-star tight ends. They're really, really good, it looks like, but I'm in 3rd, and we got some user schools ahead of me here that are going to be looking at these guys. And so I got to really know if I'm going to go all in on these guys, I got to make sure they're good. Because if not, I got a 4-star right here who wants to come on the team. And that's totally fine with me. So, like, the odds are one of these guys might bust out. And then we just slide him in, and that's going to save me a lot of points later on. And before you start spending those points, especially if you're a smaller school and have a very finite amount of points, take one last look at the full prospect board. I can look over here and see who I've targeted, but more importantly, I can see these green spots and see, okay, well, I have 3 5-star players who are interested in playing for me that I don't even have on my board. But I'm okay with that. To me, especially with 5 stars, if you're not in the top 3, I don't know. Good luck. I'm sure, I know you can still land guys, I'm sure, but I'm very, very particular about like finding players who want to be there. It's going to cost me less in the end, and you're only talking like a point or two of like overall on a player. It's really not a huge difference to me. So I just kind of take what comes to me. And so same thing, you can go to 4-star, and you're going to see I don't really have a ton of players that aren't really highly rated. So Sam Kite, we talked about why we weren't going with him as the power back. And so you just want to kind of just maybe be thorough if you have time. Just take one last look through the board. Just make sure you're not missing anybody really obvious. Lo and behold, I did find one more player I do want to add. We're going to remove that fullback. Doesn't mean I won't recruit him later. But I am going to get a cornerback on here. I don't think I want to go through an entire draft class not having any. And if I just kind of rank these guys by, top corner, I mean, the top one, well, I don't know if he's actually fully the top. Let's see. If we go to any state, he's 76th ranked. So he's not the top, but he's the 6th best corner here. We're going to throw him onto our board. Yeah, he's interested in Texas. Pro potential. So we had a corner. And so now, instead of using this last spot for the 700 and something ranked fullback in the draft class, we have the 76th best player on our board. Who wants to come to Texas, by the way? Well, because we're Texas and we have the luxury of basically scouting everybody, we're just going to roll with it. I want to see what this guy's going to look like. I love that it even shows you the abilities. I also love that you don't actually see the players overall until later. And so I'm glad I scouted him. He's staying on our board. He checked out as a 5-star. This dude is my top recruit this year. Better come to Texas. I see Ohio State's offered him already. Houston, trying to get an in-state recruit before the cutoff. Let's take a look at the next prospect. So sticking with the strategy, I'm actually hoping one of these tight ends will eliminate themselves. So we're going to go through and recruit. Wow, that guy took no time at all. So I'm actually going to have more points than I realized. The tight end scouted in just 2 scouting trips. So True Blood comes through. Most likely be offering him a scholarship, but let's go through here. Okay, so they both check out. Interesting. So then we might as well, because I mean maybe this is the guy we take off. I don't know. I probably wouldn't take him off the board because he has this number 1. This actually gets a little tricky now. So you'd have to kind of just stop and think what you want to do here. Still in the top 3 for both of these. Gonna expect those other schools to be having scholarships on these players as well. But yeah, I'll have the decision to make at tight end. And I guess we might as well, just so we're comparing apples to apples here. Okay, so there we go. That actually works out. He busts out. We're going to remove him. Not that I couldn't come back to this guy, but he's more like a 3-star. And so I haven't even really looked at 3 stars yet. There's probably some really nice 3-star players out there. You'll want to revisit that later on. But there we go. We just freed up a spot on our target list. So of course we will go in, offer these guys both scholarships. And we'll move on to the rest of our board. And now I can really just kind of pick and choose positions, and I'll just keep an eye on that national rank. I mean, anybody in the top 150 or even 200 is definitely going to get scouted. We've probably saved enough points already that we'll be able to get through everybody, but I'm still being cautious just in case. So we do have some competition here for this 5th ranked quarterback, and that's at the position, number 24 in the country. Let's go ahead and scout him. Yeah, we're going to be scouting guys really, really quick. So he does check out as a 5-star. I can't imagine we don't offer him a scholarship. I think the only way would be if both of these guys come out as a 5-star, and he does not. Vaughn does not. So we will definitely be offering Jeff Jameson a scholarship, and he instantly recruited. So we have our very first verbally committed player, Jeff Jameson, So far, at least, there are ways to undo this, it seems. He has verbally committed to Texas. So I've been going through just kind of position by position here, and we have Nick Easy, the guard we looked at earlier, has busted out. So he's more of like a 3-star. I'm going to have to go back to the prospect list and look for a guard replacement. So do you remember John Byler, the 6'6", 295 end, 5-star, 20th ranked player in the country? And I said, I didn't know if I would really recruit this guy. He just looked too good to kind of ignore. Maybe we could find a role. And I also said I wasn't sure if 5-star recruits could be gems. Well, Johnny Byler looks to be, I don't know, is this like a generational talent? I'm not really sure, but he's going to be getting an offer from Texas. Make no mistake. Trevon Abraham has busted out. Looks more like a 3-star, so we're going to end up taking him off our board as well. And I guess to counter that, Chad Kell has come in as looks like a 4-star gem, so I guess kind of borderline 5-star. Let's talk through the strategy of finding the proper prospect replacement here. There's a few options as I look at both strong safety and free safety. And one of the guys that really pops out is this Julius Heaves, who I think we looked at earlier. You can see we have 2 users who've offered him a scholarship. That's probably a pretty good sign that he's a 5-star. So it's really, really exciting, right? Let's click on this guy. Let's get him in here. We got a 2 rating pipeline. That's terrific. But if we look at what his deal breaker is, first off, an A- for Texas isn't that great. I'm easily finding guys with lots of A pluses, like you can see here. But more importantly, proximity to home. Well, he's from Louisiana, and look who's recruiting him. LSU and Alabama. Those schools, pretty darn sure, are closer than Texas. Certainly LSU, and I'm almost 99% sure Alabama would be. So this guy's not a good fit. As exciting as it is, and I probably is a 5-star, I'm wasting time, I'm wasting points, and I'm wasting giving proper attention to another player. So it's kind of come down to, not to be confused with George Costanza, but George Costanzo out of LaGrange, Illinois. I like this guy. Run support, again, we don't really have a ton going for him. It's definitely kind of like an out-of-region recruit. Michigan's going to be in, you'd think, Wisconsin, Florida, and so on. It's possible. I like this guy, and he's ranked nationally 392, so he's obtainable. But I like this guy better. I like Micah Landers, even though he's nationally ranked lower. I like that we have a pipeline influence. They both had an A+ deal breaker with us, so that's good. But I know LSU has been active on their recruiting. I see them all over as I'm going through my Dynasty, and they're not pursuing this guy. So again, this could be really quickly. He might be a bust. I'm not sure. But either way, LSU's left him alone. Maybe that is a big clue that he is a bust now that I think about this. What I love about Micah Landers is that he's 6 foot, 222 pounds. So he could play a linebacker for us. He could play kind of a situational run-stopping safety. I really like this guy. So we're going to add him on, and we're going to give him some scouting here. Work my way up the national rankings. We're up to Tyler Kroger, 279. He comes out as a 4-star gem. We're going to offer him a scholarship. He did not. I thought he might have done the auto commit, but that's okay. We're in a pretty good spot there for Tyler Kroger. We still have 285 hours left, and there's a few players here kind of in the 300 ranked area that I need to scout and possibly offer scholarships. There's also receivers up here that are a little bit higher, but just, again, not a huge position of need that I'd like to scout and potentially offer scholarships. So we should have enough points. The wild card, of course, is if some of these guys bust out and need to be replaced. Like if these guys bust out, it's no big deal. I'll just take them off my board and not sweat it. But if there are positions of need, we're going to have to come up with a plan B. But we should be pretty close to landing all of this really nicely with the amount of hours we have left. There's a super important part of recruiting that I've completely glazed over just to kind of keep the video moving along. And I've been ripping through scouting, and we haven't really been looking at probably the most important part of scouting, which is what you're actually unlocking. And so if you remember earlier, I said I still need to offer a scholarship to one of these 2 quarterbacks, and I wasn't really sure which one because I had to take a closer look. But we get a lot of information here. So we have Shakir, who's got pretty nice throw power, decent accuracy, 78 speed, not bad. He's got a lot of abilities, love the mental abilities in a quarterback, pretty darn good. Again, has us as his top choice, as does the scrambler out of Woodville, Texas, Damian Vaughns. And as we go over and look at his scouting, holy cow, it's arguably even better. His attributes are better. Throwing power of 92, his accuracy is better. Speed 93, acceleration 95. I mean, this is wild. And so even with his abilities maybe, arguably not being as good, who cares? I mean, this is the guy that's going to get the scholarship offer from us. He is a really nice compliment. You can see they actually have really, really similar ratings, and I doubt he's going to be able to beat out Jeff Jameson. You never know. We don't know their dev traits. But this is the guy I'll be giving the scholarship to, because I've taken some time just to look through and say, okay, what do I want out of these two quarterbacks? And he's the better fit. Now, I don't need to take Shakir off because I still want two quarterbacks. I'll keep an eye. He still has this as a number one, so I mean, I feel bad, and arguably you could just offer a scholarship to all three of these guys, but you just want to be careful about overloading. You're wasting points. I know it seems nice, like, well, we'll have him just in case. And even if he doesn't transfer and that sort of thing, it's just he might never play, especially at a position like quarterback. What are you going to do with three quarterbacks all coming in the same year? Even if you redshirt one of them, I mean, one of these three guys would never play. So it's just something to kind of consider. But yeah, obviously it goes without saying, you want to spend some time actually looking at what you're scouting. Getting down to the last 100 hours, and I'm excited to see Michael Landers did not bust out. I'm excited to see that he is a legitimate 4-star recruit, and we'll be offering him a scholarship. And hey, remember that 5'9" receiver that I said not to give up on? JP Kenyon comes out as a 4-star diamond. We're going to offer him a scholarship. And, well, remember that other receiver I was looking at? He also came out as a 4-star diamond, and we're going to offer him a scholarship. And right in a row here, we're just on a roll. We get Clint Whitekey to auto-commit Port Arthur, Texas cornerback. Not really a huge need, but hey, we're not going to turn down a 4-star corner who wants to come to Texas. We are about to land this really nicely. We have 30 hours left. You can see here, these are the only players that we don't have a scholarship offer to, and we know about the quarterback, not wanting to oversaturate that. Same thing with the defensive ends. I've actually scouted out a lot of really good ends that we offered scholarships to, so I like these players, and maybe they'll get a scholarship offer later. But right now, we're I guess, really lucky that we don't need to offer them. Pretty much just leaves the fullback, who, by the way, is the only other player that we have not fully scouted. So I don't think I'll have enough to... Actually, we might. I think I can fully scout this guy and offer him a scholarship at the very least, and he might be an auto commit too. So pretty high up there. Let's give him a scout first. Okay, so he disappeared off of this list because he is now fully scouted. And he comes back as a bust. So we're going to just save that last 10 hours. I don't know what I'm going to do with it just yet. I mean, I could just throw him a scholarship if I wanted, but I'm glad we did take a look at him first. Well, I didn't really find a fullback I like to replace the guy we just dropped off our board, but I did find a kicker I like. There's really a couple that I like, but I think we're just going to go a little bit of the easier route here with him being a pipeline player. Adonis Voss, I'm really focused on an accurate kicker. If you haven't used kicking in this game yet, it's tough. You want an accurate kicker. Also, I go for it a lot on fourth. When I'm inside the 50, my opponent's territory there, I mean, we're going for it a lot. I'm not kicking 53-yard field goals with a college kicker, so I don't really care about power all that much. Definitely focus on accuracy. So we're going to load up Voss here, and we'll give him some scouting. And we went ahead and spent our last 10 hours on scouting Voss. We didn't get a ton of feedback, just 20%, but you can see accuracy and kick power looking pretty good there. And that's just one of the benefits of being a huge program like Texas, is that you have luxuries such as adding a kicker that wasn't even on your board, and you can just kind of throw some scouting at them and see how it starts to look. And we'll probably continue with Voss later. It's not even a huge priority right now. We already have kickers on the team, but kicking is tough in this game, so it's something I definitely want to keep an eye on, and just didn't like the other fullbacks and whatnot. So that's my board. Guys, I'm really happy with it. We got a couple commits already. As of now, in the online league, we have the top rated class. Again, super, super early, but we're one of only 3 teams to get 2 commits. We're the only team to get a 5-star commit so far, which was Jeff Jameson. So, guys, I'm pumped. I have to apologize. I know I said we were going to get to a smaller school. I'm going to save that for a different video because this one went a lot longer than I thought. As soon as it's done, I'll be linking it to the end of this video so that you can see how I approach scouting with a smaller school, like say James Madison University, which is the school I'm using in my solo Dynasty. And if you're wondering how I picked that team, there's a video on my YouTube all about how to find a realistic team based off of real life coaching changes and things like this. So check that video out. Guys, I super appreciate you watching this video. Share your comments with me. I would love to hear from you how your recruiting is going. What are some strategies that you're using? And I appreciate you all being here, liking the video, subscribing, and checking out everything else. I'm also on Twitter at MikeLowe47. Guys, we're at simsportsgaming.com if you're curious to check out the actual league here. It is full at this moment, but we're already talking about getting our fantasy football league going this year, and we're talking about getting a new Madden league going this year. So a lot of stuff going on there aside from all of the other simulated leagues we have, like out of the park baseball and so on. So guys, thanks so much. I'm Mike Lowe. I'll see you next time.